Alrighty, what is going on, guys? Jond Games here, along with something new that we're going to be trying out. Me and a couple of friends are sitting here in front of this microphone, and we are going to be doing something a little bit different today. We are starting a podcast by the name of Radapult. No idea how that came about. You would have to ask Austin.
It's the name that I was going to give to my experimental rockapella group, but I gladly sacrificed it for this podcast.
Yes, we are going to be starting a podcast. I have no idea how frequently we can do these. It really depends on a lot of things that I just can't control. And so, another thing that I wanted to do real quick before we jump into a topic is introduce the two people that are with us. So Austin has obviously been introduced, and joining me on my left is Dan.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Yeah.
And yeah, you might know him. I've seen some of the comments asking where he was. He's right here. And
I'm glad to be back in something.
So alone. Anyhoozle. Today we are going to be talking about the topic, specifically how games impacted your life growing up. And that is going to be from all of our perspectives, and we're pretty much just going to be talking about that, ideally staying on topic, but no promises. And yeah, so...
We like to ramble.
We do.
Yeah,
Especially
pretty much.
Me. I have a problem.
Now, who would like to start? I say we let John.
All right, cool.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I guess I can go first when it comes to this. So the first little note I have is, what games did you play as a kid? And you guys can feel free to chime in, whatever.
Okay. Well, would you like to start, Austin?
I kind of got screwed over in the whole gaming race because I actually started out with a Sega Genesis, if you don't know what that is because you're not ancient like the rest of us. It was a system that like completely failed compared to Nintendo.
No, it didn't.
I mean, it did well, but Sega, in comparison to Nintendo, just got crushed because the only good title they had was Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and then Nintendo bought them up.
They did okay with the Dreamcast, which was a few systems after, right?
The Genesis was the last... During the rise of Nintendo, Sega also rose from the ashes of the video game Crash. That was during an earlier time.
Okay,
I don't know the exact details.
We don't need any more history.
Sega and Nintendo were heated competitors. That's all you need to know.
So yeah, I was Sega, and then when Sega Dreamcast sucked, me and my brother moved over to N64. We got the GameCube, which was cool. And then the Wii came out. That kind of sucked. We can all agree. So now I'm sort of trying to close in on PC gaming, which has sort of been the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm much more of a competitive player in comparison to you guys. I don't think that's a stretch.
That is not a stretch in the
Nah,
slightest.
I wouldn't say so.
I play a lot of League of Legends, a lot of Magic the Gathering, although less since college and it's super expensive. And then I've tried Hearthstone recently, which I've kind of picked up on, and it seems pretty good.
Yeah. I can say definitely as a kid growing up, Pokemon was pretty much where it all got started for me. I got a Game Boy Advance SP for one of my birthdays in Pokemon Crystal. That was like my pretty much first video game. And from there, I have been loving the Pokemon franchise. And as well as that, I've pretty much just been messing around with PC games as long as I've had a PC. And it's been pretty fun on all of it.
So you didn't get involved until you were like 9 or 10?
No, it was honestly a while into my life. Like, a lot of the time it was like TV, and then I transitioned into video games from just like watching Gargoyles.
That show was pretty sweet.
Yeah. And then...
Well, for me, I'm probably the actually oldest gamer here. I mean, I started with the black and white Game Boy. Like, there was the big one.
Yeah, I had that.
But then the smaller one. And we also had a Super Nintendo. Me and my brother played that for a while, but it was old. We were kind of falling out of it. Like, we got it in the later years. Like, right before the N64 came out. We got that. Even my dad was being into it. I remember going into my dad's room one day, and he was just powering through in Mario 64. Okay. He actually beat the game before me and my brother. I'm a huge Pokemon fan as well. I've loved the series ever since Red and Blue. I started with the original gens, but I'm not that hardcore about them. I love every Pokemon equally, even 5th gen.
Do people like vocally hate 5th gen?
Yeah, you have no idea.
I don't even know. But
I got the GameCube later
Internet
in life.
people are the worst. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I got the GameCube later in life, which was
We
fantastic.
don't appreciate you viewers.
I transitioned to the Wii, and then after that, kind of disappointment. God, why Nintendo? Why? I sort of switched over to Sony with the PS2, and I eventually got the PS3. We're looking to get a PS4, and we already have a Wii U as well, which is just the Wii with a gamepad. It's nothing exciting.
Okay,
it's pretty decent, but
It's decent. I mean, get Super Smash Bros. For it. It's gonna be fun.
yeah, that's. I'm looking forward to that.
eventually.
Eventually.
I guess I forgot
but,
to mention Smash Bros. God.
Oh yeah, Smash
Smash
Bros. Is
Bros.
a huge part of all of our lives.
Yeah, but that
Like
actually
that's,
does
Christmas specially.
To the
that
point where we try and make each other cry by beating each other in it.
that actually does lead into the second little bullet point that I had. What games left the most impact?
Oh.
For me, it probably wouldn't be Smash Bros. I probably wouldn't even say it would be Pokemon. Honestly, I would say the game Club Penguin gave me the biggest impact.
Nerd.
I think we're legally obligated to make fun of you. By the
Oh
way.
God,
It's
yes.
Yeah, I
like
wouldn't.
social Darwinism.
I,
Let's look at
I
it this
wouldn't
way. At
blame
least-
you,
at
but
least it's
let
not
me.
Toontown.
Okay.
I wouldn't blame you guys, but just let me explain.
I know.
So pretty much the way that Club Penguin is the most impactful is because it got me started in what I'm doing right now. It got me started in doing anything when it comes to video games, like anything beyond playing the game. And it got me really used to like taking media of it and putting it on online, reporting the new events and all that, the new pins, all of that random junk that I look back at. But it really did get me started to like getting involved in video games as more of an art as opposed to just like as a consumer. And that is obviously something I'm doing to this day. And I work in media, and it got me actually started with my first like websites, got me started with my first YouTube channels. Seriously, I don't think I would be the same if I had never found that game, which probably is I don't even know who introduced me to it,
That
honestly.
would be the darker
He
timeline.
started that game before Disney even took over.
Yeah, it was before Disney
Wait,
bought it
seriously?
up.
I didn't even know that you actually played Club Penguin before Disney bought it out.
I did too.
Yeah, I
I
don't
wasn't
even
that-
remember.
I wasn't that big into
I
Club
played
Penguin.
It
I
was
played
like
it for a few weeks.
It was like 6 years old, 2 years ago, I think.
I was that RuneScape kid. I was that
Me
kid in the
too. I
corner.
played that too. My parents wouldn't like pay for online things because now I realize why. But at the time, I felt like I was missing out on something. As it turns out, I was horribly wrong because those games sucked.
I was the kid in the corner of the computer class playing RuneScape with the party hat, being chased by everyone because I had the party
You
hat.
got the party.
I had the party
That's
hat.
bullcrap.
I had the party hat and I got killed for it.
For people that don't understand that, that was something that was worth like, it was like a thing that they released for one event, like 30 years ago, and now it's worth tons of in-game money and probably tons of out-of-game money, assuming that people are still crazy on the internet as they were 5 years ago.
To put this in perspective of how old RuneScape actually is, I learned about it in 4th grade.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think I learned about it
That was what, over
Yeah,
10
fourth,
years?
actually.
I think like 10 years ago?
something like that.
Something like that.
We're old.
How
Not
have the-
really.
yeah, not really, but
No, we're
like,
not even the slightest.
I have to
How have
shave
those-
now.
Oh,
Viewers.
boo-hoo.
How have those games impact you? Like, in what ways? Like, obviously, apparently you guys spend a lot of time on that.
I
I'm
didn't
not
spend
really
much
familiar
time
with
on it.
Would you care to go
games.
first, or can I?
You can go ahead because I don't actually think I tied well with those games.
Honestly, to me, some of the most impactful games were, of course, Pokemon. It was the first, actually. It's considered an RPG, correct?
I think what John is asking is like how these games have sort of shaped you as you are today.
Well, I thought the game was like, what was the game that left the most impact on you? Not. Well, okay, I can talk about that too. What is it again, Austin?
What has shaped you
Yeah.
the most?
What has shaped me?
Like,
That's kind of
Penguin's
that's more
obviously-
like what I meant.
Yeah,
Okay.
Club Penguin's obviously not like John's favorite game of all time
Gee.
for its great mechanics and
Honestly, okay, there's two transitions in my life when I went from two different gamer stages. The first one was when I got the GameCube. That was when I started getting really competitive with gaming. Whenever I'd play a friend, I would just go all out. I would not show any mercy. I was that dick who would always try and beat you and would gloat. And I was also that asshole
in
who...
the games he owns, by the way. He's just like, here's
yeah.
this obscure fighter that
Hey,
only
you
I
guys
own."
want to play DBZ Budokai? I'll totally kick your butts. Yeah, of course I will, because I own the game. But I was
he's the
also
only one
that
that
I was
owns the
also
game.
that asshole that when he lost, he pouted like a bitch. Yeah, that was me. But
That's most of us.
later
really.
in life, it's actually thanks to Austin, I got into League of Legends. And that shaped me from a console gamer into a PC gamer. And it made me look into more competitive gaming. I got into Magic eventually. Not as big into it as
Not- yeah.
Austin. Still not big into it as Austin, but trying to learn. Hearthstone, of course. I've gathered more games from Steam. It really shaped me into more of a PC gamer.
Yeah. I can see, like, I know you guys are always talking about League, and I don't.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it, so I can see.
And it's weird though because it's like a game. Like I grew up in a household or in a neighborhood where there weren't a lot of people my age, so I either spent time with my brother, and if he wasn't home, I like John. Sometimes we grew up in the same neighborhood, but very rarely.
Yeah, we weren't like very good friends as a kid. I like played in a sandbox. I used you for your sandbox.
That's fair. Oh.
Your swing set was pretty
I
sweet.
wish someone used me for
My
my
dad made it.
sandbox.
It was really sweet. But this isn't talking about the childhood memories. And
No one ever
nostalgia.
used me for my
Or else
sandbox.
Dan would be like just talking nonstop about like
It's
Power
true.
Rangers. It's
Oh, big time. We'll get to that eventually.
that's gonna be the worst podcast. Can I be not in that episode? I don't care.
You're fine.
if
You're
I
fine.
know
We could switch you
this.
out for Chandler.
Sweet. That's probably fair. But anyway, like that's one really cool concept of how video games have kind of changed our lives, I would say, because I grew up in a neighborhood where I didn't really relate to people, and that sort of continued on with like schooling, where it was like, oh, that's the weird kid that can't communicate with other people because he spent his childhood playing video games,
Yeah.
but he's really good at video games. And now the League of Legends is kind of a way that I can communicate with other people because it's kind of a competitive environment where there's things that you can discuss with other people. And it's kind of become like a sport or anything else where it's just like, hey, this is a thing that we're interested in, and it's not weird that we're talking about it in public because things have gotten weird in the last 10 years.
Yeah, they've gotten like video games in general. I believe is like getting definitely a lot more socially acceptable.
I don't think, like, it's tough to say if it was socially unacceptable, but it was definitely not acceptable to, like, focus in on.
It wasn't the norm.
I feel like there's sort of a persona, like there are the people that like are slaves to video games, and there are the people that play video games.
That was me for a
And
while.
that was just sort of how we looked at other people, because everyone we grew up with at least sort of played video games, whether it was with like a sibling if they were girls.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're sexist on this podcast and discriminatory towards women. But it's
He doesn't vouch for all of us.
only 2/3. Guess which one? But
But yeah, like even when it isn't like just video games, I remember like a lot of the reason I would go over to like people's houses was because of my Yu-Gi-Oh decks.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember
Yu-Gi-Oh.
I remember that game. It was like it got really competitive, and like I don't know, it was just a fun game. I don't really know how much it impacted.
I remember back when I was a kid, when I met Austin, one of the things we had in common was Yu-Gi-Oh. And I remember
Oh, I hadn't played in years.
for a long time I had I thought I had the best deck. I had one of those elemental hero decks that had all the like.
I don't think they know what you're talking about.
None of you know what we're talking about. But I basically had a card deck, and when I first played Austin, I would beat him all the time, and I'd be so proud of myself because I'm the best around. No one's ever gonna keep me down. And then Austin was like, you know what? Fuck you, and just destroyed me after building one deck.
And then they invented colored television. And you guys could sort of relate to this podcast.
That was the downhill slope of just me trying to catch up to Austin.
I don't know. I mean,
come back.
I definitely did make a couple of friends due to like just playing video games like Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like that, it was definitely fun to like. It definitely grew me stronger to like my neighbor friends.
Like now that you mentioned that, that was such a weird thing that people had at the time. That like every kid was into Yu-Gi-Oh, and every kid talked about all the cards that they had, and they always battled each other out, and whoever could win those battles all the time was kind of cool. Like even though I was very much how I am now, only like less capable of talking to people and more insecure about themselves, I was still kind of considered, oh, that's Austin. He's awesome at Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, and I even remember like doing like putting together a tournament essentially in my basement in a little like cardboard box shack. It was actually really cool, but it never happened.
I remember that, and I could not compete because at the time my deck got washed, which was a process that everyone went through.
Yeah.
We'd all have these decks, and one day we'd leave them in our pockets.
And they just get washed in the washer.
Exactly. Everyone. It happened to every
And like it was your
person.
best cards too,
I
and you had
mean-
to spend like another 3 months and a bunch of allowances trying to get new cards. Like
Yeah.
I
And
had,
after that, like that was sort of when I was done. Was when I washed.
you know
my
what the
cards.
thing is though is I didn't actually get my cards washed. I left them in my room, and to this day I put my Neospace deck or I put my Elemental Hero deck down somewhere, and I still think it's in my room somewhere. I do not know where it is.
So what he's saying is that Dan still keeps up with Yu-Gi-Oh.
No, I'm saying I
Ladies.
cannot find my. God dang it,
Lady.
I'm just saying that I cannot find my cards this day. But like it's just kind of, oh, what's the word to put it? I actually used to compete in Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments at like local shops,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how your view of yourself as a gamer is like I'm the best. No one's ever gonna take me down. I did not mean to repeat that twice, but when you actually go into competitive play, it's amazing how much people could just crush you instantly. I remember walking into my first tournament being like, I'm going to win this. The only game I won was because one kid had an illegal deck. If that puts it in perspective.
So that it was just a technicality.
Oh, yeah. That was my only win ever.
I mean, even like when it comes to even the games I play today, it does like feel kind of competitive whenever like as personally like I'm going to just transition right into Minecraft. I am pretty competitive when it comes to like
He's been holding that
building
card.
maps.
God
I've
help
been-
you if you take my diamonds.
I've been holding this card for a long time. But yeah, I get really competitive whenever I see like other Pixelmon maps, and I get really defensive, and I'm just like, I'm gonna kill you. But like, obviously I don't own the rights or like the exclusiveness, like, I don't know. It's just,
That's the
it's
worst
just a little bit,
interpretation of Viridian City I have ever seen.
it's just, it gets competitive. It really does. Like, that's something that I definitely haven't felt outside of video games. I haven't really ever felt that competition with like my multimedia pieces.
I had a talk with my dad the other day about this, is how, like, in the days when blue collar jobs were the norm, it was good to play football or in other sports because you had to be strong to be able to work in a factory and construction or whatever. But now that white collar jobs are becoming more the norm, it's actually good to be a gamer, and now that's like sort of looked down at less, and that's going to sort of be seen as the norm because you do have to learn skills like analyzation and like the ability to think outside the box, which a lot of white collar jobs, which are now the norm, require.
Yeah.
Now, here's something for you guys, is what game do you remember playing as a kid, going back and not feeling that same enjoyment? Like, imagine a game when you were a kid you used to play all the time, but going back it just seemed different to you as an older person. Could be bad, could be good, but what was it like to you?
I really can't say a whole lot when it comes to like console games, because like I go back and my dad had like an NES, and I can go back and play pretty much every single Mario game that I have on that system.
Oh, yeah,
and
those are
it
so
still is like amazing. But
Well, I don't know, you also have Jekyll and Hyde.
I bought that
Yeah, but that
later
was
in life.
Yeah.
But yeah, but whenever it comes to like a game that I would look back at, I can pretty much only say like Club Penguin, because like I really enjoyed that for whatever reason, and now it's just like
They were so
for kids,
cute.
for kids.
I feel like that game is sort of built on this system that you think like, well, if I do this game is going to be sweet. Or if it's like, oh man, once I get this, it's going to be really, really great. And it never gets to that point. Like, it's just like constant build up to nothing, but we're never convinced of that. And that's what that like membership thing is really good at, is that kids feel like, oh man, there's so much to the game and I want to play all that, but I don't want to pay for it or whatever. And then they convince their parents to pay for it. And then they realize it's the same game only like the same things in a different environment.
Congratulations, you got new armor.
Yeah.
You get new clothes, armor. I don't think they had armor in.
He was
Not
talking
Club
about
Penguin,
well,
like-
yeah, I was sort of referring to
I was
RuneScape, too.
I wasn't
okay.
actually on RuneScape. I played RuneScape, but the actual game I really got into on the internet was Adventure Quest Battle-On. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that wasn't
was
even
a-
multiplayer. That was just like
It was
an
a single
online
player.
RPG.
It was a single player with 2 static. You had your character and your monster, and that was it. And you just clicked and fought, and they fought.
You know,
It was a really weird game, but I remember as a kid, I just freaking loved it. I loved the crap out of it. I played it every day. But I remember going back recently, just like, okay, let's see how it is. I went back and I was like,
what do I do?
I literally, I played for a solid hour. I tried to give this thing, I was like, maybe I'll capture the magic. And I literally just, I logged off. I was like, wow, I was a sad kid.
Here's the thing: is I think games in recent years have gotten really, really good at capturing people's attention. Like, just look at Candy Crush. That's
Yeah.
just
Oh,
Bejeweled.
God.
Yeah.
And people have like ruined their lives with this game because it knows how to keep people in it.
Or even just like something maybe even more simple. Flappy Bird knows how to like ensnare people's attention for God knows how much time.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
Didn't Angry Birds do the same thing for a
Yeah,
while?
Angry Birds.
Angry
like,
Birds was one of
were-
those.
Like these
Games are getting better
little-
at it.
These little dollar games that like ruin people's lives with how many hours they put into. John,
And
how
when
many
it comes
times
to,
have
like,
you played
Candy-
through Plants vs Zombies?
7.
Quite a few.
But like, look
I
at it.
like that
this
game.
Small,
It's so good.
these small games can become something big. Like you have now actually console versions of Angry Birds,
Which is so stupid.
Oh, I agree.
By the way, it's just like I wonder if people are stupid enough to buy this twice,
And they do.
and they do.
Not
Because
only
they
t-
keep making them.
No,
Here,
not
do you
a-
want this game for $30 when you could get it for
Hang on.
$1 on your iPod?
Not even twice. They have Angry Birds,
Oh,
Angry
you're
Birds
right.
Seasons, I think they even made like a Christmas specific
They
version.
made a Christmas specific version. Star Wars, Space.
Star Wars, that's what I was thinking of.
Star Wars was cool though. I'll defend
Yeah,
Star
Wars was cool. Space was.
It was pretty neat.
Space was different too.
I wonder if these guys, like your viewers, just think we're sellouts. They're like, these guys are selling in to the man and ruining the gaming.
Freaking
company.
Rio.
If anything's ruined the gaming companies, it's Assassin's Creed. I'm just gonna say it.
These are our opinions.
I'm not.
You can feel free to disagree.
Yeah,
Asterisk.
no, you shouldn't, because Assassin's Creed is terrible. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's good for 10 minutes, and people still keep
Hey, Austin,
making
look
the
at that.
same game.
And let's say there's 1 million people watching it, about 90% of that hate you now.
I don't think so. I don't think Assassin's Creed has that big of a fan base. I
You
just
really
think
don't.
that there's so many,
You don't know.
so few games that are released on a regular basis that are cool and interesting.
I will admit this, Assassin's Creed got very boring. When it first came out, it was like, oh, cool, I'm an assassin in biblical times. I kill people. This
It
is
wasn't
so
biblical
cool.
times. It was during the.
What was it again? What time? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm a Catholic. I should know
Just-
the name of this.
Just olden times, because I remember horse and carriages.
And then what happens next? Ooh, I'm an assassin in what was that time period of
Yeah, just
the
go
Victorian
ahead.
era?
Renaissance. During the Renaissance in Italy.
There was Renaissance, and then there was
I'm Ezio. I'm a super assassin in the Renaissance. What's the next game? I'm Ezio in the Renaissance with more assassins. What's the next game? I'm Ezio as an old man. What's next? Now you're a Native American in the Revolution, and
then
now
he's
you got a boat.
You know what? Like,
what the heck?
So here's the thing: is there was actually a big gaming company that came out and said they have no interest in making a game that they can't make a franchise out of.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that you can kind of see in the Assassin's Creed is that instead of making
Assassin's Creed, Call
new
of Duty.
games, they make games that people wanted to make in that world. Like Assassin's Creed is a game about pirates, the new one.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
At least that's a completely different genre from what we know about the Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah.
So they're kind of forcing this game that someone probably wanted to make into a franchise, both to sort of keep it like new and fresh, but also to make new games because people are afraid
To beat the dead
tinker
horse.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is something that I actually really like about. Oh, I'm sorry.
As
go
long
ahead.
Here's my question whenever it comes to like all of these series games and like the games that go for more like encapsulating your attention more rather than like giving you actual story.
God.
how do you think these are impacting people and like how they're growing up with them? Like, obviously, people are still growing up with games like Pokemon X and Y. Fantastic. I have no problem with that. But like games for their iPods and for their phones, how are those also impacting them? Because I think we're getting less of the console games that are like one-hit amazingness and more like Call of Duty 4002, Black Flag. I know I just combined two things.
We now have laser guns. That's
Okay.
all.
Okay, so like you bring up a good point that like there are all these little games for the iPod that are catching up, and I don't think they're wrong, but I think people sort of get addicted to them. Like I don't think people necessarily enjoy them all the time. Like I'm just gonna say it up front. I actually don't mind Candy Crush. I don't say anything on Facebook, and I usually just play other people's phones. But I'm like, this actually seems okay.
It's decent.
But
I played it
things
for
like
a while.
Angry Bird are
I
just,
own Bejeweled.
yeah, but things like Angry Bird just kind of get boring,
Yeah.
and I think people aren't going to be able to play those forever. And the problem with like the gaming companies right now is they're making things like BioShock, which the new one was really good. I'll give them that. But once again, it was sort of a completely different franchise. The Assassin's Creeds, the Battlefields, and it's just that people aren't willing to take risks. But there are these little companies that are starting to be willing to take risks thanks to Steam sort of making it easy to make it right for the public. For instance, let's look at Minecraft, John. You've obviously put a lot of your financial interests into Minecraft. That's a game that a little company made that everyone was like, holy crap, this is a really good idea, and have poured
so many hours and so much resources. I would honestly say it's getting to the point where it's almost becoming its own little industry itself, like a sub video game franchise and like industry, because like it's so vast what it's created. It's just like games like that I do like the impact of, just because there's so much to do in it. You can pretty much hone skills in whatever you feel like you want to do. Like you want to learn basic circuitry, go learn redstone. You want to build design and like be able to improve your critical look. Like, I don't know, critical looking's not the right term, but that's just what comes to mind. Just like being able to visually look at something and think like, how can that be improved, and all that kind of stuff. So I think like games like that could have a positive impact. But
spatial orientation, maybe.
So what you're saying is that like because there's so many mods and so many options that people can just kind of tailor the game to themselves.
Because it's so vast, people can do basically whatever they want and get whatever they want out of it.
It's a blank slate, and you do what you want with it.
And I think we're going to see more of that as the technology that we've used to make games in the past that used to be sort of exclusive to the gaming industry starts to trickle down to smaller indie companies, that we are going to get cool games. We're going to get a lot of crap, don't get me wrong, but we're also going to get other cool games that we really like.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
So I have something to ask is where do you think the technology is headed? Now, we already have established that the Oculus Rift is a thing. It's virtual reality technology. It lets you immerse yourself in the game. Where do you think this technology is headed? Do you think we'll get more advanced with it, or do you think it's just going to stop here and we won't go anywhere else?
I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but I don't think the Oculus Rift is going to catch on.
I am somewhat of that mindset as well. I keep thinking of certain things like 3D, and the Oculus Rift is obviously immersive 3D. But I think like that kind of stuff seems like you're going a little bit too out of your way to get it to work into like you have to essentially suspend your I'm sitting here in this chair for a while and immerse yourself in that world. I think that takes you a little bit maybe too far out of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, immersive technology like that is really good for like some games. I can see how that'd be really helpful and like really memorable, but I don't know how well that would last. And I am a pretty big fan of the Oculus Rift. I'd just like to say that it's really awesome.
Me personally, I agree with Austin. I don't think the technology is going to go anywhere. Like, and I'm going to throw a reference out here. If anyone has seen Sword Art Online, anyone out there, you know of the Nerve gear. Something like that is never going to happen. We're never going to see full immersion technology in our lifetime.
Okay.
We will never know that it will be there, but can pretty much say in confidence that full immersion technology of body and mind into a game, mostly mind, is not really possible at this moment and won't be for a long time.
Here's my main complaint about the Oculus Rift. This is something that someone brought up recently. You're still wearing a thing on your head the whole time that you're playing. Like, that's not... Like, someone brought this up in an article I read. I think it was, like, David Wong I was reading. But he said, like, there have been a lot of things with stuff to people's head. I'm sorry. I'm spacing out here.
I'm sorry, we rambled for a bit on something that's off topic. But how do you think the new consoles are going to impact new gamers?
I think people are starting to get a little sick of what's coming out.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, I can see people that are just growing up and only knowing these kind of games, like the full HD Battlefields out there and like Call of Duties. I can see those being much more the norm. And if somebody, God forbid, comes out with another 8-bit game, it's going to not really fit in, and I can see how that might be a little outcast now. But again, the technology was just growing up whenever we were, and so we were dealing with like all of these pixels on all of these consoles. And I think like that is going to happen, like it's going to get a lot more detailed, but also it's going to be like much more expected, and it's probably not going to go very well when things aren't conformed to that very well, unless like God forbid, shaders doesn't work on Minecraft.
We did grow up during the very end of the Bit Wars, so...
Well, that's still sort of going on. That's like...
At this point, they're much more about processing power than they are about bits.
That's true.
Bits don't even... Are bits even a thing anymore?
I'm pretty sure bits were gotten rid of during like the Xbox One and PlayStation 1
Call of Duty,
things.
7,000 bit.
Yeah, it's got to be something ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's got to be like...
It's in the millions, I would imagine, at this point. Because 8 bits...
Battlefield HD, 1 million bits.
Because I'm just saying, the NES was 8-bit. Probably not. But the NES was about 8-bit, wasn't it? 8 or 16?
The NES was 8, Super NES was 16, and then 64 was 64.
Yeah, like I said, they're growing... But at that point, like, after that, they're about growing at exponential rates.
The thing is, though, the GameCube was a shift. Like, the GameCube was like, we're not going to use bits anymore.
Yeah,
we're going to focus on processing power, like you said. But the GameCube was that first step, and so was the PS2. They started shifting, like, okay, well, the PlayStation 1 was actually the first thing I can think of to actually not use bits anymore, since it was the first, like, not the first, but the first functional CD-based game system. I'm sorry.
Okay. But back to this point, I was going to say, I think a lot of the kids now are going to be playing a lot of the same games we played as kids. Because I think the games that we have sort of released in the last couple of years, they're not particularly memorable. We're going to come out with new ones that are exactly the same with new technology. But there's a certain place for simplicity that I think a lot of the big game designers are ignoring. Like, people didn't like Mario at the time because it was the only thing that we had the option for and that we didn't have any better technology. It was kind of a technological, like, jump forward in the business. But the reason we liked it was because it was simple and it was, like, had a clear goal and the mechanics were fun and, like, really engaging. In the same way that Candy Crush sort of, like, pulls people in and they want to keep playing.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a complicated system that we're seeing in a lot of the Assassin's Creeds where it's like 30-step processes. You have 500 builds and items. And
the game doesn't need to be complicated to be good.
Exactly. And I think people are going to start seeing that, and that's when the indie companies are going to start stepping in with these cool new tiny games.
I don't know. And I think until the generation that, like, I don't mean to single anyone out, but, like, players that are not really addicted, but are kind of, what's another word I'm
obligated? Like, that's the thing is...
But obligated to play games that have a big following, such as Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty. I don't think we're going to see an end to that for a while. Like, until...
I think people are starting to get sick of it.
For a while. you have to remember that it's still a competitive game. There are competitive tournaments for Call of Duty and such games like that. I agree with you that it is falling out, but you got to remember our generation grew up with that. I don't think until our generation stops playing video games is it going to really fall and the indie games rise.
I honestly would really like to get a little bit more feedback on this topic because obviously we are pretty old. Like, we're almost done growing up, I would say, when it comes to
we're almost
the video
20
games.
guys.
We're getting to the point where it's going to be irresponsible for us to be spending this much time playing video games and not paying child support.
We're going to be going from nerds to just weird.
Or adults.
I would really like to get a little bit more feedback on this. I would love for you guys to comment if you're still listening to this. I would like to get another bit of perspective just because I know my audience is a lot younger than I am on average, and I would really like some perspectives on people growing up that are younger than us, because obviously I can sit here and say, oh, well, this game had the most impact and this is the reasons why, but I couldn't really empathize when it comes to that because I'm so set in my ways when it comes to what has really impacted me personally. And I would really like for you guys to join the conversation. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. And yeah, again, I have no idea how often we're going to be doing these, but if you guys did like them, I would appreciate the thumbs up. And yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed. Austin, Dan, thank you guys for joining me. And we'll see you guys next time.